Hehehe. Tabloid carrier here, kids. Time for another modular chiller horror theater. Oh, I hope you're good and scared tonight, kids, because we got a real scary one for you. It's called the Modular Studio. Yeah, Count Lloyd hasn't seen the film yet, but just from hearing the title alone, you know it's going to be scary. So stay tuned, kids, because it's going to scare the pants right off of you, or dresses, or whatever it is you wear. Alright, let's take a look at that film. I hope you enjoyed my homage to Count Floyd and SCTV. And if you did, well, you're probably Canadian.
Good day, welcome to the Great White North.
I hope you're all doing well, staying safe, and getting lots of quality bench time in during this unfortunate situation we all seem to be having to live through at the moment. So this video is a bit of a side project that I thought I should do before I continue on with other things. It's all part of the quarantine challenge that's been going around amongst some YouTubers. And I was asked by Semyon down at Scale Journal, which is a really good channel out of Russia. You should go check him out when you get a chance. Maybe give him a subscribe and a like as well while you're there. So he's passed the torch to me, and at the end of the video, I'll pass the torch to a couple other fellas. So essentially, the video will be behind the scenes of a modeler's studio, and particularly my studio. And I'll give you guys a little tour of tools and my workspace and stash and that kind of thing. It's not something I really ever planned on doing, but I thought if it gives somebody a little chuckle and I can show you a small part of my little world here, what the heck. Alright, let's do this. Okay, well, I guess we'll start over here in the corner with one of my display cases. And up here you can see the camouflage net you see from time to time in some of the videos. And there I have a tortoiseshell World War II Canadian helmet. And inside the case, here's some of my trophies. A few other models you guys may not have seen before. I've been to World Expo a couple times. Those were fun times. One of these days I'll have to get back down there. And another one of the shows I really used to like to go to was the show in Chicago. And you can see evidence of the show. I've been there a few times. And then some other medals and trophies from surrounding shows. Some more Chicago medals. And then some kids stuff on the bottom here. You know, little keepsakes, you like to have those around. And then a few books that I like to keep on display. Books that I find rather interesting that I've had in my collection for a while now. This cabinet here is one of the cabinets I used to have when I owned a military themed hobby store called Small Soldier, as you might have guessed. That's where the channel kind of spawns from. From owning that store, I thought I should kind of continue on with that. I used to teach classes through the store, and that's kind of what the YouTube channel is all about. I've got some of my great uncles, actually no, not my great uncle, I've got a cousin's uncle that was in the Second World War. He was in the South Saskatchewan Regiment and was a Bren gun carrier driver. Over here I've got some leather flying gloves, World War II vintage, and some World War I miniature medals. And then on the bottom I have some items from my aunt's brother-in-law, who was a tail gunner in a Lancaster, I think. And then a vintage World War II Calgary Herald newspaper. And over here I have some flats that I was given by a friend a few years ago. Moving to the top of the cabinet here. Organized chaos, I suppose you would call this. Just it's actually a spice rack that was given me by a friend, and it's kind of convenient for holding, grasses and rocks and Q-tips, and then some other tools that I use from time to time. Here I have 3 turning storage units, and they carry some extra tripods, photo etch bending tools, paint brushes, glues, same thing over here. And these are the brushes that are more my throwaway brushes that I use for things that I don't really care so much about when I'm using putties and that type of thing. Some razor saws, some blades, and then this one contains similar items, and then my bits for my Dremel tool, some pens and miscellaneous items in there. And then up here I have different types of blue tacks, different strengths, some more Q-tips, my Optivisors, a compass set I use from time to time, and in these drawers here I have all my photo etch bending tools, a couple different brakes in here, grab handler, razor saw. This is called the Nutter. It's for making nuts and bolts out of thin foil. This is a Trackmaster. I've never used it before, but looks like it'll come in handy sometime when I'm working with individual link tracks. This drawer here I have all my rubber molds and thin wood strips, all different kinds of molds that I made throughout the years. These are cast heads for sculpting, like I guess they'd be blanks for sculpting heads. In this drawer here I've got my epoxy putties, groundwork materials, Vaseline, handmade sculpting tools, extra tape. And in this one I have more razor saws, some extra lacquer thinners and Tamiya thinners in there, my beading tool, some more Mr. Surfacer. This is my photo etch rolling set, and you'll see that when we go over to take a look at the ship. Some of my glues and Tamiya putties, and a whole mess of clothespins which I use for clamping things from time to time. And in this drawer, there's some miscellaneous tools, circle cutters, blades, anything that has to do with sanding is in this drawer. And then I've got oil paints in this drawer, and some more oil paints in this drawer. Like I said, organized chaos, as my wife likes to call it. And then some tongue depressors, my Bondic pen, profiler, more of these rubber vulcanized pads I use for when I make rivets and that kind of thing. And then over here on the wall I have a vintage 42 calendar. January, as you can see, that's when my dad was born, January 42. And for some reason he kept that calendar and gave it to me. Bonus for me, I think. And the clock that I look at every night and go, oh God, it's 3 in the morning, I should be going to bed. Some pictures here that were given to me from a neighbor. He had them sitting in his garage and didn't want them anymore, and I thought, well, I'll take these. And moving to my main desk here, this is where I do all my filming. You can see my rig. It's just 2 drywall poles. Oh, and I forgot to show you in the corner there, I have a shell casing. Not that that's important, but some people like to see that kind of stuff. The tools that I mainly use as my daily main tools: Optivisors, all my lights for when I'm filming, computer setup. This is just my tabletop computer. And here you can see I'm working on the Rommel bust. That's up next in the next video, so hopefully get that up pretty quick here. And this is how I store my oil paints in a very Canadian Hudson Bay metal tin. If you haven't guessed it by now, I am Canadian.
Speaking moistly on them.
Some of the oils I'm using with the Rommel figure. And you remember that guy? He was featured in the last video on painting eyes. And over here I have all my good paint brushes. These are all my Winsor Newtons. Some shading pencils, or weathering pencils I mean. And I have it divided up into oils, acrylics, and metallic brushes. You always want to keep your metallics separate from everything else. And another little rotunda I have here for storing super glues, drill bits, pin vices, sanding sticks, lacquer thinner, brush cleaner, some more glues, some palettes I keep here that I use quite a bit, and the Series 7 brushes I'm using right now to paint the figure. Back here I have my Dremel tool and some bits, and this is my crock pot that I use for drying my figures out when I'm painting them or if I'm sculpting. And then up here on the wall I have a nice Volstad print, and then all my MIG paints, MIG thinners, weathering washes, decal setting solutions, some Air and AK specialty paints for certain subjects, and then I have here all my Vallejo paints, some of the new AK paints, and more decal setting solution. These are my Airs. I don't use those so much anymore, but from time to time. And then on the bottom are all my Tamiya paints, and they're getting blocked by some of the models sitting in front here. So I noticed that some of the guys were showing some of their unfinished projects or projects that need to be finished yet. Here's a Kieran figure I started years ago. It's a Kharkov guy sculpted by Roger Sanders, a really nice sculpt. I'll have to get to that one someday and finish that guy up. And below it here are a couple projects I'll be doing coming up after the Rommel bust. And a 72nd scale diorama here that I was working on years ago. Never quite finished that one. And an Alpine figure here of a Panzer officer. And I've been toying around with the Tamiya BT7. You can see I've got the figures finished, and most of the kit is finished. I've got the Frul tracks for it, but there's quite a bit left to go on that. And like I said, the Ryefield kit, which will be the next thing after the Rommel figure. I'll be finishing this one off. And another project that's ages old that I should probably get to one of these days. And it's the Italeri Sahariana. Kind of a unique vehicle, and you can see there I've added a lot of extra detail. I've added all the grab handles along the sides, all the resin bits. It's a Royal model aftermarket set that goes on it. Some aftermarket wheels are on there. Fun kit, so I should get back to that guy eventually. And here you see the Tamiya Matilda, and that's as far as I've gotten on that one. I've added some scratch building as well, some of the stowage brackets, the light here at the back. And next I've got the Bronco Humber scout car, and you can see there's a ton of stuff there. Got the Legend stowage set, some Alpine figures I'm planning on using, interior and exterior photo etch, resin wheel set from Hussar, and here's some of the work I've done on it so far. You can see there's a lot of intricate photo etch on the roof. Probably leave that as a so you can take that off and so you're able to see all the interior parts. So that's all the unfinished kits. Back here I've got my Tamiya Workstation stand, some weathering pencils, some paint sets, some more brushes that I use when I'm airbrushing, some Molotow pens, some clips for holding stuff while I'm spraying. The bottom drawer down here is all my Alclads. And in this drawer here, I've got some weathering masters. Don't use those that often. Some mixing cups. And in this drawer, a whack load of photo etch and detail parts. And this one's all my solder, wire. And these two drawers, I've got all my weathering pigments. And in this drawer, I have some MV lenses, some syringes, some parafilm, and then some rigging line, some easy line, some brass rod and tubes. And then in this drawer, I have all my Humbrels, some GW paints, and in the bottom one here, I have more Humbrels. A few testers, I hardly ever use those, but the Humbrels I use from time to time. And these are my two airbrushes that I use. I have the Iwata HPC Plus and the Iwata Micron. This one is the workhorse. It does most of the clear coats and all the nasty jobs. That one is more for my fine finesse work. That is my airbrush stand. And down here under this table you can see I've got a M51 that is looking to get built eventually. Some more ships in the corner there. And some other miscellaneous items in those boxes that I probably have to look down there to see what they are. I can't remember. This is my compressor, and it's out of action right now. And you can see why. I had a leak in the actual tank. So I don't know if this is going to work or not. I filled it with JB Weld first, and then I've coated it with a couple layers of epoxy sculpt. So hopefully that'll cover the hole. I don't know if it'll blow through that or not. And if it does, well, it looks like I need to get another compressor. Over in these drawers here, I just have some stationery stuff up top. More stationery stuff in this one. Some paint palettes and extra Tamiya paints, extra Vallejo paints, and some MIG stuff. And then my turntable that I use when I'm displaying in my videos. Some resin heads I use for practicing on. And in the bottom part here I have spare airbrush parts and my rubber gloves. Moving along over here, you can see this is my airbrush station, spray booth, and it's a little unconventional. I don't have a place to vent it out, so I vent it from the back, and it comes down along the bottom here, and I vent it into a pail of water. So if you guys don't have a place to vent your airbrush, I would suggest getting just a dryer tube like that. Cut a hole in the top of a small paint can, fill it about half full of water. The fumes won't go in there, but the particles will dump themselves into the bucket. And up here I have an extraction fan which moves 300 square feet of air per minute, so that usually gets rid of most of the fumes. And along the top you can see some of the kits I have that I haven't built yet. I don't build car models, those are my son's. Who knows if he will ever get to those, we'll see. And there you go, there's a few kits in there. The rest of the stash. There's some kits in here. There. A few other kits back there. We've got a few here. And then in this cabinet, I have some more kits. As you can see, T-34. Some figures here. A few more kits back there. I'd like to build those little Star Wars kits sometimes. They look really nice, but simple too, right? Sherman and a Panther. These ones I was really happy to get. I picked those up a few years back. Classic post-military figures. And this one you saw in the painting video, and a few other figures in there. I don't have a huge stash, but enough to keep me going, I'm sure, until I croak. And there we've got a few other nice kits I want to get to eventually. That pretty much does the stash. As my wife says, my hall of shame. And inside these cases here, all my extra spare resin and figure sets, headsets, hornet heads, and some other small accessory kits, some resin bits, diorama parts. And in this one there's some more figure bits and resin pieces. More resin bits, trees, resin buildings, and diorama parts. And in these two drawers, this is all my tools and glues and you name it, it's in here. Oh, don't worry, that's not COVID. And some of my life miniature busts. Some other projects that I did in some other videos, which need to be finished. That figure back there I've been sculpting, and that's going to go with my FT-17 eventually. And some files, chain, spare hands and feet. And down here is the workhorse of my YouTube videos. My headset for my voiceovers, speaker, the video I'm working on presently, which is this one. Some magazines, and I bet you haven't seen one of those in a long time. Look at that, a fax machine. That comes right from the dinosaur age.
A new fax machine?
And we'll take a look inside this cabinet here. That one I still have to build a base for. As you can see, I like to build a bit of everything: aircraft, armor, figures, ships, And the occasional sci-fi piece. Some other awards I still haven't stuck on the wall yet. And this is kind of interesting. This is my grandfather's rejection papers from the military. He had flat feet. Poor guy. And on top here you can see I've got another British Tommy helmet that I use in some of my videos from time to time as well. My British flag, which I really like. And in this corner here is all my reference. Osprey books. Lots of Osprey books, they're really good. And then some how-to books, weathering books, painting figures, all that sort of stuff. Books on armor, some more reference photos, other books. So I don't have a ton of books, but probably what I need. And if I need other books, I pick them up from time to time, but my reference library is pretty good. And finally, we'll take a look at the HMS Hood 1/200 scale kit, which I'm still working on. This is my tools here. I've got them in this box so I can conveniently move the whole thing instead of having a big mess that I have to work around all the time if I have to clean things up. On the tabletop here, and there you can see the hood, the full length of it. About just over 4 feet long, I think. And if you haven't watched my videos on this, you can check them out. I can leave a link in the video description, and you can go check that video out, or those videos out. Reference books. These are the rolling tools I was telling you about earlier. If you need to make curved pieces, there's all your various rods. You stick them in the channels and you roll them in, and you can get curved shapes really easy. Very handy tool for photo etch. And here's some of the items that I've been working on. Some gun platforms, the masts for the ship, some ladders, some small ships. So that's pretty much the studio tour. Ooh, wasn't that scary, kids? Count Lloyd was scared at that. I don't know about you, but ooh, it was, alright, maybe it wasn't that scary. But you don't think that having all those model kits and all that sharp tools and toxic chemicals, you don't think that that's scary, kids, right there? And never being able to build them all in one lifetime? Alright, that's scary. Anyway, we'll have a real doozy for you next week, kids. I promise you that. Or I'll drink my own blood. It's the sun's coming up, kids, and you know what happens to vampires when the sun comes up, right? Until next week, kids. This is Count Lloyd Care saying goodbye. Well, I hope you enjoyed my studio tour and I didn't absolutely bore you to death. I guess it's time to pass the torch, as they say, to the next couple fellas. So I'd like to pass the torch to Chris down at Braille Scale. He does some great 1/72nd scale dioramas, 35th scale stuff, and even dabbles in a bit of figure modeling. I'll leave a link down below and you can go to his channel and check him out. The next one is the Chieftain, and he does some great 1:1 scale, not modeling, but historical walkarounds of vehicles from all sorts of museums, tank parks throughout the world. And actually, he's just started doing some modeling on his channel as well, so you can go check him out. Well, that'll be all for me for now. Stay safe, stay inside, and most importantly, build more models, man.